Mark chapter 8, verses 27 through 33. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." This is a fascinating passage for so many reasons. The first section, verses 27 through 30, as it's likely broken up in your Bible, is really pivotal. It's a question that we all have to wrestle with at some point and have to come up with an answer at some point. And I love the way that Jesus starts off the interaction with the disciples. He begins by pointing them outward. Who do other people say that I am? He's inviting them to kind of evaluate and think about it. But he doesn't just live there. It's great to kind of have a sense of what's going on, what other people are saying. You can discern some things from that, but ultimately it comes down to us, right? And so after inviting them to look outward, he invites them to look inward. Who do you say I am? And I love the fact that he asks them that question, because we all have to be asked that question, ask ourselves that question. Who do I say that Jesus is? Because while I can look at the faith or the beliefs of the people around me in my life, my friends, my neighbors, my pastors, the world, I have to make up for myself what I believe about Jesus. And Peter, of course, here responds, "You are the Messiah." Peter gets the answer right. I just watched Jeopardy tonight, and I'm not a big Jeopardy watcher. I'm not a big trivia person. But when you get the answer right, you're rewarded, right? Whether it's for Double Jeopardy, Daily Double, the final Jeopardy, you get it right, you win, and you move on. Peter here gets the answer right. He passes the test. And yet, he doesn't understand the meaning. He misses out on what that actually meant for Jesus to be the Messiah, for Jesus to be the Christ. And I think that's something that we need to be aware of in our own lives, that we may have the right answer, that yes, I believe that Jesus is God's Son. But so often I think we don't understand the fullness of what that means. See, I think Peter had a box that he put Jesus in, that the Messiah is going to look like this. It's going to do this. He's going to accomplish this. And Jesus has to deconstruct that for Peter. That's what the next section is all about, as he begins to explain what the Son of Man has to go through, what the Christ would have to go through, to suffer, to die, to be rejected. Those are not things that you would equate with the Christ, with the one who is going to redeem and save Israel. My question for myself, for you, is in what ways does Jesus need to deconstruct the way that you view him? In what ways does he need to broaden my scope beyond just merely human concerns? It's not bad to have human concerns, But if I'm only concerned about human things, then I'm missing out, because God's concerns are all-encompassing. They're bigger than that. And it's not just that he includes the human concerns, is that the way that he looks at humanity and the world is different than you and I in the midst of his concerns. So how do I step back, deconstruct all this baggage that I so often bring, all my expectations, all the ways that I'm influenced? And how do I ground myself and try to take on a God perspective of life that includes suffering, that includes rejection, that includes self-sacrifice, self-denial, that includes serving others, that includes giving away power by being merciful, by caring for the things that God cares about and the things that Jesus came to do, to love, to serve, to welcome. In what ways do we need to deconstruct what we think about Jesus? What ways do we need to grow in our view of who he is and what he is going to do in our lives? I pray that we all would be willing to listen to what he has to say and to continue, like Peter does, on the journey with Jesus, that we all would experience a day of Pentecost, filled by the Spirit of God, transforming the world, being transformed by God, and bringing as many people into the kingdom as we can.